Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 6th of February, comes to you from London. And we'll start by looking at currencies, then some stock markets, commodities, and then last of all, some US tech stocks. And we start by looking at the dollar index. Just coming through the cloud this morning on the price, not quite through on the lagging line. We do have quite a lot of downside targets in the short term. Of course, the long-term picture is still pretty bullish. Looks like we're just finding support on the cloud at the moment. We're sitting at 99.94, so just under the $100 100 point index level. So we are still looking pretty good on the weekly. The daily is just testing support. It'll be really key to say whether this short-term chart gets through. And the euro is the converse picture as always, and we're seeing here we're just starting to fall below the cloud as well, and potentially finding some resistance on the cloud here. But the euro recovery, we see it here in the weekly chart. The last several weeks, we have had quite a good trend recovery here. Upside targets in the short term, but the medium and long term pictures still look pretty bearish. But for the moment, that euro dollar relationship might change this week as we see the cloud cross in the short term. Japanese yen, we're below the cloud here on the yen. Yen strength, dollar weakness, we haven't quite crossed here either. So no clear downside targets. There's a few downside targets that were given, but nowhere near as clear as those euro and dollar index charts. Looking at sterling, sterling is actually back below the cloud. So this is more sterling weakness than dollar strength at the moment. We're back below the cloud here. We do have these medium and long-term downside targets. No clear short-term targets yet to play for. So for the moment, sterling is starting to look weak again. Trying to just break through on the medium-term chart, but if we lurch lower, then that puts the lagging line below. Interestingly, the sterling has less work to do to get into bullish territory now. We've got a flat line cloud here. So that will be quite interesting just to see. But for the moment, short-term weakness in sterling. And we see that against the euro as well. We're below the cloud here too. And if we look at the Swiss franc, we're below the cloud at 124. And the Aussie dollar, again, below the cloud. We've got a downside target of 155. That's 4.5% downside. So that's short-term, but still pretty bearish on all three time frames. Looking at stock markets, the S&P 500 had a good week last week. We closed higher. The daily chart was just not quite above the levels we saw in January, the 2300 level we see here showing up. But we are bullish on all three time frames still, and good upside targets. And if we do just go higher, only by a small amount, 1 or 2 points, we would activate this new 2,371 target. So we've got upside potential here still in the US stock market. US stock market is still looking pretty good. Nasdaq looking bullish. The Dow, the same picture as the S&P, not quite breaking higher than those January levels. And the Russell 2000 last week did actually recover. So the US stock market's looking pretty good. The futures this morning in London just very slightly down, but no real heads up yet as to where the US will open. FTSE's back above the cloud, so that's quite key. We had a 50-point close up on Friday, so we have recovered through the cloud. Upside targets bullish on all three time frames. So UK market starting to look good again. FTSE 250 is really powering ahead, so that's great news. And the DAX is not quite above the cloud on the short-term chart, so that's not as good. The Nikkei, we see here we're just falling below the cloud a little bit, so Asia not looking quite as strong. Shanghai open this morning after Chinese New Year week, and we see here that we are just above the cloud. Still got work to do to get bullish on the weekly chart. The Hang Seng, however, is just starting to come through on the weekly, looking pretty good all round. And India continues to power ahead. This market looking very strong, has had a very good run, almost up 10% since the start of the year. And all these upside targets here, big upside targets, 50% upside, and then the short-term chart looking good as well. The Australian market was down just very slightly, still not quite above the cloud. Strong Aussie dollar having a little bit of an effect there. Taking a look at crude oil, 56.88 on Brent this morning. We're sort of hugging these high 50s. We shouldn't be that surprised. We've had targets to these levels, and we're now there. We've got a target of 59 and 60 on the medium-term chart. 58.54 was the target for the short-term chart, so another couple of dollars there. So it does look like crude is still continuing its New Year run. It's what we did last year. Most years we go up in the first bit of the year, so we shouldn't be surprised to see crude going up. We're quite bullish on it for this quarter, and we see the same for WTI as well. Upside potential here too. If we look at nat gas, has just been in the doldrums, sitting at this 306 level, just really struggling to stay out of these low 3 levels, coming back below the cloud on the daily, and bearish on the 60-minute chart, but no clear downside targets here to play for, but a lot of volatility and still looking. It's a failed recovery really. It's just not managing to continue the recovery. So we are not bearish yet in the medium and long term, but the short term is still pretty bearish. Taking a look at gold, we're seeing that gold strength kicking in this morning. It was strong close on Friday. We've got an upside target here now on the short-term chart that's activated 12.59 for gold. That's 2.9% upside. We've also activated this 14% upside target, 13.96. So we are seeing that change kicking through. We're not bullish on the medium-term chart yet, but we did seem to find support here on the long term, and the short term picture is looking pretty good. So precious metals have had a pretty good start to the year. Silver, much the same picture, just wandering through on the weekly, and some good upside targets potential as well. Copper is bearish in the short term. Below the cloud, no clear downside targets to play for here, but the medium and long term chart still pretty bullish. Taking a look at the 10-year Treasury yield, we're just back below the cloud here, 2.45%. We really are just teetering in this 245, 250 area. So at the moment, but we do have the longer term upside targets to play for. Apple had a really great week last week on their results, up strongly. A new high would activate a 16% upside target. We've got an 11% upside target on the medium-term chart already activated and underway. Google, not as good results the week before. Had just kept Google a bit in the doldrums short term, but medium and long-term charts looking great. Amazon just fell below the cloud on Friday, quite a sell-off there. So we are just seeing a little bit of a retracement. Facebook's results were also out last week. And the company has seemed to have taken those in the stride. We are still above the cloud on the weekly, the daily, and the 60-minute. We've held on to that, so quite key. Their long-term targets still look great. Microsoft had a bit of a sell-off at the end of the week, but looks like it's just finding support in the lagging line in the cloud. We see here we've got an upside potential of 4.8% to $66, and again 4.7% on the medium term chart, as well as some bigger upside targets around 30%. So still looks pretty good, Microsoft. Nvidia, my best performing stock last year, stellar performer. Interestingly, closed higher on the weekly, but that spike there is the daily that we saw in December. So Nvidia has been higher. Their results out Thursday will be interesting to see. There'll probably be quite a lot of volatility in the price around results this week. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.